Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's YouTube live webinar from LUNGevity Foundation and the Rising Tide Foundation for Clinical Cancer Research. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Upal Basu, and I am the Executive Director of Research at LUNGevity Foundation. And we have a very exciting lineup of speakers. But before we do that, we have a couple of slides that we want to walk you through. So again, welcome to today's webinar on patient and community engagement in lung cancer research in low and middle income countries. And we are really here to learn lessons from the field. And anyone in the lung cancer space is very aware of the fact that while right now the burden of lung cancer is high in high income countries, it is increasing as we speak in low and middle income countries. And by 2050, both the health burden and the economic burden of lung cancer will be seen highest in low and middle income countries. So patient engagement and community engagement is of paramount importance. And now I would like to invite my co-moderator, Dr. Karolina Werynska, to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. It's my absolute pleasure to co-moderate today's webinar. Rising Tide Foundation for Clinical Cancer Research shares LUNGevity's foundation mission to support the most patient-driven clinical trials in lung cancer, in our case, in all cancer types. And really, patient involvement is in the heart of our organization. That's why this conversation, the one today and in other episodes of our webinar, is so important to our work.
Thank you, Karolina. And again, this is a joint effort between the Rising Tide Foundation for Clinical Cancer Research and LUNGevity Foundation. As Karolina indicated, both foundations are very passionate about ensuring that the patient and the caregiver voice is integrated in all research projects. And today's focus is specifically on research projects in low and middle income countries. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Karolina.
Thank you. As mentioned before, the purpose of this webinar is to share success stories of patient involvement that really made an impact in the field. In the past, we have shared several success stories of patient partner researcher collaborations. This webinar will focus on two pioneers of patient involvement in low and middle income countries, a topic that we are so happy to discuss today. And we hope that this episode will help to educate both patients and researchers on how to approach patient involvement from different perspectives, different landscapes, provide some tools on how to engage in these partnerships, and discuss even metrics of success of what patient involvement can bring. A few housekeeping items. Please use the comments function to ask panelists any questions. This recording will be available on our YouTube channels and our website after this webinar will finish. And please subscribe, like our channels and social medias to stay tuned for more future webinars. We hope that this webinar will especially capture the audience interested in clinical researchers and patient or caregiver research advocates interested in collaborating with projects on projects in low and middle income countries. And please feel free to reach out to us with any questions you have during or afterwards. What will we be discussing today? Two critical questions. How do you build trust in communities skeptical of research? And what are the most practical steps that when resources are limited? And these questions will be tackled by our guests today, true pioneers in their fields. Dr. Vivek Tomar represents Rise to Survive Cancer from India, and Caleb Egwuenu, Move Against Cancer Africa from Nigeria. Welcome both, and please introduce yourself briefly to our audience.
Okay, Namaste from India. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you are in the world. My name is Vivek. I am India's first patient advocate of lung cancer, as well as I am India's first patient research advocate for in the field of oncology. And being first is not an achievement or pride. Being first means I have to go through everything to set up from the scratch, and during the journey, I realized, which we all know, that research saves life, and it is not an option. It is a mandatory step to allow equitable access and better healthcare and better life with cancer in lower and middle income countries too. So you will hear more about it from me later today. Thank you.
Yeah, Caleb Egwuenu, from Move Against Cancer Africa, headquartered in Abuja, Nigeria, and we're a patient organization, and I am happy to be here, to discuss this very important, topic, and as we go on, we'll be able to, talk more about, patient engagement in research. So thank you.
Thank you both. And with that, I would like to invite Vivek to share his journey with us. We will have about 10 minutes from each of the panelists, and afterwards we will follow with some discussion. Vivek, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and again, Upal by Dr. Carolina, Dr. Upal, and LUNGevity, and both the organization. So, I'm presenting today on from statics to stories, which I truly believe, and bridging the lung research gap in India. But I would cover lower middle income countries, as I shared. I'm first patient advocate in lung cancer and the research. I'm co-founder of Rise to Survive Cancer Advocacy Organization, India's first oncogene research organization, L Positive India, White Ribbon Project India, and Kusum Memorial Cancer Foundation, which I have started in memory of my loving wife. Move to the next slide, please. Okay, so let's first go to the right side about how the lung cancer landscape in India. While for the global world, especially in the high income countries, they see lung cancer as a disease of the past. And in past, I would say that when I joined any global lung cancer support group or community, there was a discussion that we have five medicines, we have four trials, what to choose. When you come to India, there is a question, do we have any medicine or trial at all? Or do we have only option to go to the chemotherapy, which we know officially, and I'm not against chemotherapy, but for the cancer with the mutation, the survival rate could be 6 months. So most of the case, it has been said that if someone survives 5 years, in countries in India and lower middle income countries, it's still a miracle, and in high income countries, it is 5 year survival is kind of a norm, even at stage 4. And so that's why in India and lower middle income countries, it is a disease of the future. It is affecting young. It is affected people with who have never smoked. It is affected more women. Most of the cases are people who have never smoked, and they are young as 12 years old. So that's how the situation is worsening. And yet, as per my research, shows that our patients remain virtually invisible in global clinical data. And as you can see that if we have 18% of the global population, but global trials are only 1.5%, 1.4%, and the representation gap. And in that, if we go for lung cancer, it is only 0.64%. And for because of the poor diagnosis, high cost, nothing is covered in insurance, 70% of at least cases, and lack of awareness, stigma, patient advocacy, not that capable. So 70% of the cases are diagnosed at stage 3 and stage 4, and that's very different to the global world. And on the light side, this is the data, and I am one of the human face of that data. And you will hear my story in bit more in the later slide. But what I can tell is that this data make a person journey from me as a caregiver when my wife was diagnosed at stage 4 lung cancer, who has never smoked, metastatic to brain, bones, adnexia, ovaries, given 6 months to live, and how a single story and single effort make her the longest survivor, not in only in India, but in Asia, that leads to saving many more lives and today millions of lives. That's why it's not a just data point; it's a diagnostic odyssey, and this is me presenting to the community of oncologists and radiologists and surgeons in one of the biggest conference where I was presenting how research saves lives from the patient point of view. Next slide, please. So in India, we are navigating a deeply paternalistic medical culture where the patient voice has historically been silent. It's a decision given, and patient as a partner is still a largely a theoretical concept. We still don't have, and I would say it's for almost all our middle-income countries, that there is no formal mandates for having patient representation in the trial design, ethics committee, and where there are in ethics committee, there are the need. It is not the patients, it is general public, but they are not aware of. There is no patient advocate, and where are there some patient advocate in some of the government meetings or pharma? They are one people everywhere. They are not the lived experience. They are some of the clinicians who are sitting on behalf of the patient on the table. And um, for example, in India, we have high number of patient support group with support in emotional component. But when it's come to the financial, when 80% of the expenditure is out of the pocket, or when it's come to the patient advocacy, we are still at first step, but we are moving ahead. But what we are trying to achieve, that decision is not taken by one, neither only by the oncologist, but patient and patient with the family, and we are educating them. We are using the WhatsApp, which is available with everyone now in India in large population, and mobile peer groups, recording session, engagement to bypass the systemic gaps. And what we have also presented that, for example, if I am an expert of because of my lived experience with lung cancer, so and there are others we have identified who are interested, and we started to write email to pharma companies, academic institutions, and government that we want to get. And my grandmother used to say, they may not respond, but if you keep shouting, they will listen. They are listening, and they will respond one day. And that's happened, and that's how I become first in every case. And now I am a faculty to these medical college, and then we are also educating patient advocate, patient research advocate. So it's a chain, and that's why I always say, don't wait to be a team to be prepared to do something. If you have a passion, if you have a purpose, it may be selfish to save your wife. That's perfectly fine. Start the momentum, and believe me, only one candle light can remove the darkness of whole room. You don't need 100 candles, so you just have to start. And we keep asking about, for example, if you see patient information leaflet or guideline, it was always so complicated. Even a person like me, who in Indian culture is well educated, I'm struggle to understand. So we keep raising, and I'm proud to say that it works. It took years, but first time in January 2026, India has its by government of India has its official lung cancer guideline in the history released in January 2026, and as well as along with the guideline, government has released the plain language summary, which is not only in lung cancer, which is released for patient in plain language summary across the cancer. And I'm so proud that they did it for lung cancer. And still they have some gaps. They have covered EGFR, they have not covered ALK and ROS. And we gave a presentation on behalf of L group, and they are revising it within 3 months to include all mutations in the guideline. So that's the impact of engagement. That's what is called the emerging shift. One day at a time, but losing is not an option. Next slide, please. In India, the barrier is just biological. It is logical and social. We face, as I said, the diagnostic odyssey where a person's survival often depends on the pin code. Where does they live? Their ability to travel thousands of miles to a metropolitan city or hub where they can have NGS testing, mutation testing. There could be a lung cancer specialist, and they have to travel, and not they have to travel. If it takes 10 days test, they have to leave their job or take leave from the job, and they stay 10 days, 20 days. So that's a huge financial toxicity in addition to the everything being done, the treatment cost. And as I said, uh, not a single lung cancer targeted therapy is in government insurance scheme. So, so our response is and should be is to for lower and middle income countries how to decentralize the thing, be it decentralized studies, trials. Uh, we have to move the knowledge, not the patient, to reach by using digital tools. Most importantly, we are fighting the stigma of and this is very close to my heart that what you do to cause this is, are you a smoker? The biggest stigma. And my right now question is, and I ask deliberately every day, what is the genomic profile of your cancer? So from guilt to genomics, that's how things for research can also change, and we are trying to change in India and lower middle income countries, so that, and that's the impact. Government releasing the lung cancer guideline in after 50 60 years of the freedom. So yeah. And then obviously I am personally partnering with number of Ministry of Health, central as well as the Ministry of States, as well as WHO. And first, we have to struggle for years to have a seat. Now we have a seat. Now we are struggling that they hear us. But I always say that in advocacy, try with 100 stakeholders. If one will say yes, like Dr. Upal or Dr. Carolina, as to organization, that's our win. Grab them and identify the next one. And that's we are trying, and there are definitely results and which are moving mountains. Next slide, please. Okay, so so you can see on your screen that's my amazing, beautiful wife, and if I can share the story in few minutes, that Kusum, as I said, diagnosed, and she was diagnosed at the age of 29 when my son was 3 years old, and there was not a single targeted therapy available in India at that time, and there was available in US, and the cost was that much, which was more than the salary of my 2 years full salary. So we have to sell our property to bring those medicines, and that was because he has health, that was creatinine, and she got survived for 2 years, but obviously the big R resistance came, and then we came to know that there is a clinical trial of serotonin medicine going in US, and we were told that it is not in India. And we that's where I came to learn about first experience of patient advocacy. But at that time, it was purely to save Kusum. So I started from going from it was Novartis headquarters, writing emails. I have just info at Novartis email, writing them, and everywhere, nationally, globally, different oncologists, government, writing emails and moving. And I went to a conference where all of them was there, and I was not invited. Kusum and I went. Kusum was in very bad shape at that time, and we went somehow. And during a Q&A session, she stand up and asked if a mother with 3 years old son can have that medicine in US, why not in India? Can my life is less important than anyone in any other part of the Western world? And that changed. And within 1 month, the trial got approved, applied and approved in India, and she became the first patient from India to get serotonin-based trial. And after that, 17 other patients got enrolled, and 3 of them are still living. And it is like 12 years old thing. That's how. And then she became a first patient from India through the similar story for alectinib, and at that time I would let you know that she has 10 brain mets when she got progression on serotonin, which increased to 32 big mets, and she got paralysis. On 17th of January 2017, she became the first patient through research, and we had a huge fight. And you see the third photo. This is the national TV where I went with Kusum's photos for debate. And after that, that trial came, research came, and she got access to alectinib. And after 9 months of having that medicine, Kusum was running in a marathon wearing this t-shirt, 5 years at stage 4, surviving with hope, courage, clinical trials, and research medicines. And now millions of patients are taking those health medicines. And the central photo is I am talking with the FDA Commissioner of India, that is DCGI, and the Minister of Health of India, along with Kusum. And before us, it was a discussion like commercial discussion where it was oncologist, pharma companies. But when Kusum and I started to speak, it humanized everything. And after that meeting, 5 clinical trials rules have changed to India to have better access of research and trials that is now saving and helping thousands and millions of patients. And that's a story, my friend. That's not a story of, it started a revolution in India healthcare. We bring 6 clinical trials and research medicine to India together. And now all the medicine and trials of ALK is in India. And because of the clinical trial rule change, we have seen significant increase in the research happening in India. So Kusum journey proved the advocacy is just not about the support. It is about access. By bridging the gap between the ministry and the global sponsor, we ensured that inclusive research wasn't just a buzzword, but a pathway to changing the national policy. And Can you move to the next slide, please? If you want to remember a few things, first one is research saves life. And as I said, every voice matter. A single, powerful, authentic voice is more powerful than 1,000 voices together. Okay, so please, you have a phone, you have a story, start the advocacy, engage with the research. You will find good people who will be your biggest support. And as a return, we are not a subject, we are a partner. And I would say that, for example, India and lower middle income countries, just not a recruitment site. We are the co-investigators in the survival. Let's commit to a future where the next breakthrough is accessible to every person, because every life matters, be it in Europe, US, India, or Africa, regardless of their pin code. And I will tell you that it is very important to cover all the regions. For a researcher, grade 2 is nothing, but a grade 2 fatigue for an Indian labor is the losing the job, maybe losing the hope and death. That's why I always say that policy is personal. Policy is very, very personal. And I would conclude with that it's not a checklist item. The data isn't diverse. The science isn't complete if we all are included. So thank you.
Thank you, Vivek Bhai. Now let's hear from our next leader, Caleb.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'll be talking about rethinking advocacy in Africa. And as I say Africa as well, I mean low and middle income country. Next slide. Yeah, so this for Africa, it's is a blessing, and as well it can turn to a cost, because by 2050, it's projected that the population of Africa would double, and as well as 2100 would have the half population of the youth the world would be as in Africa. So if nothing, how I see things is, if nothing is really done now, as in what would happen in the next 10 to 20 years. Go next slide. So what we see predominantly happen in Africa is, over the years, I've been a patient advocate for over 17 years, but I became a lung cancer, patient and research advocate in 2018. And what we've seen is that most of the time, what we have in Africa is awareness, not, advocacy. And when you try to differentiate what's awareness, the process of spreading knowledge and making and informing the public about the issue. But our advocacy goes more deeper, trying to change the system and the policy decision makers, going deep, and and we know as well this takes a long time. So awareness is something that can be done quickly, but advocacy takes time because it has a lot of precision, a lot of planning and measurement that goes with it. So what we are trying to do is rethinking advocacy, as in what we call advocacy in Africa is actually awareness. How do we change that to really be advocacy. Next slide. So we have the steps. I wouldn't take long time because I want us to have more of interaction. So what we have in terms of the steps for advocacy is, as in a form of awareness is part of advocacy, and we have as well as engagement and as in education, and as well as community building, advocacy, collaboration, and as well as feedback. So this is a loop, that goes round, and to be able to complete the cycle. Like I said previously, advocacy is, as in, it's not a one-time thing. It's something that takes time, that impacts on people coming. Let me give you one example, right? So with the work that Vivek has been doing since 2017 in India, trying to get as in drugs, as in approved in India and coming to the market in India, you find out that that work has now turned to benefit people from Nigeria and Africa, because you see people from Nigeria and Africa leaving here to go to India to get those drugs, right? And he never knew that that impact was not only for people in India, was equally going to as in be systematic, that it helps even people in Africa. So it's something that you might be doing it and continue taking time, a lot of resources and what. But eventually, what happens is that once it's put there, not only people in that region, but people even elsewhere could actually benefit, from this. Next slide. Yeah, so I just, talk about the engagements, some of the events that we've had, in our organization, Move Against, Cancer Africa, and as well, our partners that we've had along the way. And one of them I really touched, put more light on is the first one, which is the Pan-African Conference on Lung Cancer that held in 2025 in January, Accra, Ghana. That process started in 2019. In 2019, I went through a program, the STARS program in ISLAC, and that STARS program, my mentor happened to be, Upal, Dr. Upal on the call with us. And we had, as in two goals. We had the short-term and the long-term goal. And one of the long-term goal was, how do we establish something that is systematic in Africa, like a meeting or like a convergence of people, both clinicians and patient advocates, nurses, and everyone coming together to discuss lung cancer in Africa. So that was our long-term goal. So think about it. It happened, we started planning in 2019, but eventually it happened in 2025, right? So it takes time. It takes time, a lot of meetings, having most times weekly meetings, and to get this done. But what happened that we had over 100 people come from all around Africa to Accra, Ghana to talk about lung cancer. We had clinicians, we had nurses, we had pharmacists, we had patient advocates, we had patients, coming together to talk about it. And as well, MACA, Move Against Cancer Africa, was instrumental to help assist, bring, get a scholarship from ISLAC for 20 patient advocates, from around Africa. And the second one is, what things that we've done in the kidney cancer, space, as well as we've had a conference last year that was International Cancer, Week. And this International Cancer Week, interestingly, in 2009, around like 2 years after I started my patient advocacy journey, I was actually, myself and one professor called Professor Fomo Koye were the ones that started this International Cancer Week. We ran it that 2009 and 2020 and 2010. And now the Federal Ministry of Health has taken over that program and running it every year, bringing together people in Nigeria to talk about, cancer generally. Next slide. So thank you very much. I just wanted to point this. This was in 2019, like I said, when we started, with the short-term and the long-term goal. We fulfill the short-term goal and as well as the long-term goal. So you can see that I'm carrying my mentor, but the other way around, he's the one that carries me. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you both very much. It was such a pleasure to listen to your stories. And I have so many questions here, but for the sake of time, I will limit myself. So my first question, Vivek, will be to you. You mentioned so beautifully how that authentic voice matters and that a personal story can shape policy sometimes better than data. I want to ask you about a specific example of how you build trust with communities to encourage, to empower them to share that voice. Communities that perhaps were initially skeptical of research or policy, in fact.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. So, trust isn't built in the hospital; they are built in the community, and there are so many stakeholders for the research, and I'm sure it is equally applicable to globally, irrespective of it is high-income countries or lower-income countries. But for a country like India, something bad have happened in around 2014 in the clinical research and some of the clinical trials, and then whole media was like against every clinical trial research happening, and everything was stopped. And there was a famous term then started, is that patients are guinea pig for profit. And at that time, I started the advocacy because if serotonin trial was not there, Kusum would not have be running in that marathon after completing 5 years. India's first and Asia's first 5 year survival at stage 4, and that to so many parts of the body. And so media was against, and people listen. What is in the media, and then doctors are busy in their clinical practice. Why do they care when they have a busy clinical practice? And I'm not against anyone, but things were so bad. So when then we started to share our story, and we started to share that if that research would not be happening, we will not be sitting here. And it's not about clinical trial research. You see it, it's not about success and loss. We started to give example that if sedative or any drug trial would not be happening in India, that drug will come when it got approved in other countries, and that would take 7 years. So a patient after 7 years, it may be beneficial for that when it goes through all the phases in other countries, and then it comes to the lower middle income countries without trial. But my wife can't wait for 7 years. Your sister can't wait. Your children can't wait for 7 years. They are going to die. So that's why we are talking about human life, and that's example we started to give. And I remember we are doing a media interaction, and someone said to Kusum that, so you are a guinea pig. How about that? And Kusum, a brave girl she was, she said that if being guinea pig, and it was already 6 years completed by the time, if being guinea pig, I'm sitting here talking with you after 6 years being participant of different research, then I'm proud to be a guinea pig. And that changed. That changed. Because then suddenly a lot of media started to cover, and we were on the front page. We become the cover story in the #1 English magazine and the media. I don't know, because I think they are sick of sharing negative stories. And then, as I said, there were some good people who want to showcase. And I'm not saying that everything is good, but there are good which needs to present, and that's build that the culture or the system that every day I receive at least few emails where patients are asking, I am of this type of cancer patient, where I can find this clinical trial. Is there any research happening in India, or which country can we go? Can we support? That's the impact, and that's the trust. How can we maintain? We did it.
Vivek bhai, your example is so powerful. And I think the fact that Kusum so bravely responded, saying that, being a guinea pig means that she's alive for 6 years. I think, another patient hearing that from a fellow patient, it's just a different feeling than hearing the same thing from another stakeholder. And I think your story is the best example of how patient research advocates, caregiver research advocates help building that trust. Had it not been Kusum saying that, had it not been you pushing for clinical trials when there was a very high level of antitrust in India because of the 2014 situation, then you would have not had trials. So thank you, Bhai, for your advocacy. And Caleb, along those lines, Vivek Bhai is very practical example of, how uh, patient research, patient advocacy played a role in bringing a trial. I want to kind of go back to one of the slides you talked about what are the different stages of sort of setting up a project or partnering with patients in low and middle income countries. And I want to kind of go a little bit more practical and ask you, if someone's, and you have a lot of experience in this, and you also mentioned that it takes time, the 2019 to 2025 example. Uh, if someone, was to start a lung cancer research project, say in Nigeria, what would be 3 steps or 3 practical pieces of advice that you would give this researcher so that they can have meaningful community engagement?
Yeah, thank you very much, Upal. So, number one, be it a researcher or a patient wanting to be a patient advocate, the practical step, the first step that I would, advise from my own point of view, is, first of all, get connected to a community and to learn. And one of the great communities that I connected with in 2018 was the ISLAC community. I won the patient award for 2018, and then in 2019 I joined the STARS program. The STARS is the supporting training for advocates on research and science. And I think that's the first step if you're a patient or a patient advocate wanting to go into the lung cancer space. Then as well, if you're a clinician, it's great as well for you to join, ISLAC. ISLAC is a body called International Association for the Study of Lung Cancer. It's a body that every organization, as in fighting thoracic malignancies, come together. So I think that would be the first, practical step that I would take. Then the second one that I would take, if you're what's it called, clinician or patient advocate, wanting to go in order not to be biased, we just started in a program in last year in August, and it's the African Lung Cancer Community of Practice. So the community of practice is where everyone comes together, clinician, nurses, pharmacists, patient and patient advocates coming together in a community to talk about have projects together, talk about lung cancer. So I think that would be a second line for people to join that community and be able to move forward. So example, there are projects that are going on that people are looking for other people to work with, as in that community we connect people and they're able to as in do it. Then the third one would be in your own locality, start how talking to people around you, go to, the clinic and, meet up the, discuss. That's if you're a patient or a patient advocate, talk with the clinician, even clinicians, to see how, like one of the medical, the clinicians that came for the conference, last year in Accra, Ghana, she actually mentioned that, wow, coming to the conference and coming to the training that we, had turned her to a patient advocate. So I think, these are the three, practical, steps that I think that people could take to be able to, as in, if they want to go into patient lung cancer research.
Thank you very much. And now I have a question, the last question actually, but for each of you. Looking ahead, what will be this one thing that gives you hope for the patient and community engagement in your countries? One thing each.
I'm a patient advocate and we always get last time, so I will cover 15 things in one sentence. That's how things work. But what gives me a hope is the shift in the face of the advocacy. We are seeing a new generation of younger, digitally connected patient and caregivers, women, young, who refuse to be invisible in the global data. I see hope in the fact that we are moving from guilt to genomics. I see hope in 1.4% trial static, not because it's slow, but because it represents a massive untapped frontier of global science. For lower income countries, we have high population, so, and nothing is rare at our end. We are a huge market for everyone. We have a huge research. So it is an untapped market. We just, you guys, research has to include us. So that's a big hope for me.
Yeah, and for me, thinking about, it, there are a lot of things that give me hope, right? One is, seeing, I still go back because, it's something that is really huge. When the meeting happened in Accra, Ghana last year, it gave me so much hope. Seeing over 100 people come together in one place to talk about lung cancer, that was like, what, like, when you're pumping up your energy. So that's, pumped my, energy more, because I like, wow, this is, huge, and, more people, talking about lung cancer, and, the stigma that comes with it, starting to, like, dissipate. So that's, one thing, that gave me, real hope. Then seeing people too now wanting to engage, seeing a lot of people from all around, Africa wanting to engage and talk about, lung cancer, where it would have been like, sort of like a taboo to talk about it because of the association with tobacco. So I think, there are lots of things, but I would just like, mention, these two, and as well, people around, yeah, as in me, and, I know that there might be, that I would, mention. So people that you have around you, and people I've had around me, mentoring me, gives me hope. Opal and Jill, they give me so much hope, as in to want to, like, fire on and, continue and, see what to be done, not just in my country, Nigeria, but around, Africa. Okay.
Thank you so much, Vivek Bhai and Caleb. And Caleb, I think mentoring is both ways. I think Jill and I learned from you as well. And I would say that I prefer the word co-mentoring, because we're all learning different things from each other. I don't think everyone knows everything. So it's really a partnership, and it's really a team. I firmly believe advocacy is a team sport. And it's been such a pleasure hearing from you both about how what brought you to advocacy, and thank you for sharing very practical, realistic tips and examples, so that for people for whom advocacy in low and middle income country is relatively new, I think they learn a lot from what you've shared. And with that, Karolina, I'll pass it back to you to close up the webinar.
Thank you. Oh, I love this hopeful message, the energy of people helping people, of raising together. Beautiful way to finish this discussion. Thank you all for joining us, for listening today, and whenever it is that you're listening. We are always open to answer any questions and direct you to any resources that you might need. So feel free to drop us a line. And yes, with that, thank you both, Caleb and Vivek. And I'm sure we will see each other very soon.
Thank you
Thank
very
you for
much.
having us here. Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.